Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into what is pretty much an emergency room scenario for any beekeeper. You open up your strongest hive and it's full of swarm cells. Prevention has failed. So we're going to get into a really powerful solution called the Simmens method.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll talk about that point of no return, when you know you have to use this method. Then, we'll get into the cool science of why it actually works. After that, it's a step-by-step, practical walkthrough. We'll also look at the different ways to do it, compare it to other methods, and wrap up with a really clear calendar to make sure you nail it.
So let's be clear, we are way past prevention at this point. This is for that moment you crack open a hive and your heart sinks. You see swarm cells. The bees have pretty much stopped foraging, and you can just feel that their biological clock is ticking. They are ready to go.
Right. So when those gentler methods like maybe a DeMari are no longer on the table, you need something powerful. You need a technique that guarantees a hard reset, but, and this is key, it does it without splitting and weakening your best colony. And that, my friends, is the Simmens method, a type of artificial swarm that's actually been around since 1884. So how in the world does this actually work? Well, what we're doing is creating a sort of controlled catastrophe. It forces a hard reset on the colony's behavior. You can almost think of it as a kind of shock therapy for a hive that's completely stuck in swarm mode.
And the core idea here is just fascinating. We're basically going to make the bees homeless, just for a moment, by shaking them all out of their hive. And doing that, it triggers a biological panic button. It forces this immediate shift in their priorities. They go from thinking about swarming to pure, unadulterated survival. This shock makes the bees act exactly like a natural swarm that's just moved into a new home. And here's the magic. Their swarming drive is instantly switched off. All that pent-up energy from thousands of young bees who had nothing to do is suddenly redirected into this absolute frenzy of building new comb and foraging like their lives depend on it, because they do.
Okay, enough with the theory. Let's get into the practical side of things. How to actually pull this off. Precision is absolutely critical here. So let's walk through this step by careful step.
All right, this slide maps out the whole thing, but I want you to focus on 2 points that will make or break this whole operation. First, step 1. That single frame of open brood isn't just a suggestion, it is the anchor. It's what keeps the bees from just taking off. Second, step 4 is completely non-negotiable. If you miss even one of those emergency queen cells in the top box, the whole thing was for nothing. They'll just swarm anyway.
Now, this method has changed a bit since the 1880s, and it's really important to understand why the modern version, the one we just covered, is so much better and, honestly, a lot safer for your bees.
Okay, the original version is just extremely risky. Shaking an entire colony into an empty box with zero brood, well, there's no biological anchor. That can cause so much stress that they just decide to abscond. The whole shook swarm can literally just fly away. The modern method, with that one precious frame of larvae, is nearly foolproof. And why? Because bees will not abandon their young.
The upside here is huge. For one, it works every single time, even on colonies that have already capped their swarm cells. You also get a ton of beautiful, new, clean comb drawn out in record time. And maybe most importantly, you don't have to split and weaken your strongest colony right before the main honey flow kicks in.
But let's be real, you need to be prepared for a workout. Shaking every single bee off of, say, 20 frames is physically demanding. It creates a lot of chaos in the apiary. Plus, it requires you to be confident that you can find your queen, not just once during the big shake, but again 10 days later during the rotation.
So, with all that effort, when is it actually worth it? When is this the right tool for the job? Let's put the Simmens method in context with other common swarm control techniques so you know exactly what to do and when. This table makes it all pretty clear, right? DeMari is what you do for prevention before you see any swarm cells. A nablet split is great when you actually want to make 2 hives, but Simmens is your specialized, high-powered tool for one very specific job, stopping a full-blown swarm impulse without losing a single forager for the honey flock.
Now, you can't just do the big shake and walk away. The job isn't done. The follow-up is absolutely essential for locking in your success and making sure all that hard work pays off.
Here is your action plan. I would strongly recommend marking these dates on your calendar the second you finish the procedure. And again, that check between day 7 and 9 is the most critical step of all. If you miss that, the entire method will fail. The bees will just raise a new queen in that top box, and off they'll go.
And that's really the trade-off, isn't it? It is a demanding method, no doubt about it. But mastering it, well, that transforms a potential disaster, a lost swarm in a crippled hive, into a huge victory, a super powerful colony and boxes full of brand new comb.
At the end of the day, this technique puts you, the beekeeper, in complete control. It lets you harness that immense, almost explosive power of a hive that's ready to swarm and redirect it entirely towards your own goals. You get to build a powerhouse colony right at the most important time of the year.